He says, but we're still investigating someone else. And I said, okay then, the only thing I'm gonna ask is please don't say that the investigation's over. And he said, well, it is over for the one policeman.
So if we're doing the math, are there two guys that you're pinpointing in all the conversations we've had publicly with regard to corruption? Are you talking two guys?
No.
Just so people can pay attention, because I guess
No, I don't
want
wanna say two, and I don't wanna say three.
Okay, because the way it appears to the public is that by not naming anyone, and I know you preface it or whatever you do to say that there's only a couple bad eggs and then the rest are good guys, hardworking. But by not naming anyone and not, the DA bringing that forward, you bringing that forward, just like everyone's guilty.
Well,
you know what I mean? So
my personal opinion
yeah,
is like when I talked to the DA and he told me they were investigating this other man.
right.
And I honestly don't recall if he said we're investigating a couple different ones, but he did say one in particular, and he said you absolutely cannot say anything because we are fully investigating this. And I says, well then the only thing I'm asking you is don't go to the newspaper and say that we investigated it and it's over. I said, because it's not over. And he says, no, it's not.
Okay.
But the one is. And I said, well, I understand that. I said, but there's also an ongoing investigation. He said, well, you can't say anything. I mean, is there? Yes, there is. Matter of fact, I picked up my mail one day and talked to a state trooper. And he told me, he said, we get calls here all the time. And he says, and we know who you were talking about. And he said a person that I totally 100% forgot about. And so that was brought up to me.
So how many are we talking, people-wise?
Honestly, if you wanted my truth, the honest truth about how many I think,
Not using names, just numbers, yeah.
I would say 3, maybe 4.
Okay.
Okay?
And this was going on when you were there, because I mean, the obvious follow-up is
Why did I
not,
say
yeah,
that?
why not then, yeah.
Okay, well, a good example is when you're in that position, if first of all, let me start off by saying, if a policeman commits a crime,
Right.
if you go out on the street and you punch somebody, that's harassment.
Right,
You get arrested for harassment.
right.
If a policeman punches somebody out on the street, it's still harassment.
Mm-hmm.
But can it be handled through the department without charging you? Yes, it can. So the same crime now is being handled through the department.
The same department where that worker.
Where the same department. Okay, so they say, okay, yeah, he did it. And depending on who you are, depending on the person, and there is favoritism, I don't care no matter where you go, but down there's a lot of favoritism. And they can say, geez, what'd you do that for? You shouldn't have done that. Well, you know what? I'm gonna have to suspend you for a day. Okay, they dished out some kind of punishment. It's handled through the department. You won't know about it, I won't know about it, nobody will know about it.
So does it come down to you just not being happy with the punishment that was handed out when you did know about these incidents and when the chief knew about these incidents, or is it stuff that still hasn't been, the punishment still hasn't come for some things that, you're just not happy with the punishment, or has something not?
Oh no, I'm not happy with the, first of all, I think if you take an oath to be a policeman,
Right.
I mean, I don't care what you did in the past, but while you're that policeman, you should be honest, and you should do what's right.
Okay.
I don't think that you should feel that you're above the law. I don't think you should feel because I have a badge, I can do this and you can't.
Right.
It should be fair for everybody. And if a policeman does something wrong or illegal, a good incident, we had a policeman suspended October 12th, I think 15th and 16th, Friday, Monday and Tuesday.
Okay.
He was suspended because 2 weeks ago on Main Street, on Main Street in a parking lot. He urinated on a police car.
So he's off duty or?
And when the policeman yelled at him and said, "What's wrong with you?" he got mouthy, which was disorderly. Well, first of all, there's a charge of public lewdness.
Right.
Second of all, there's a charge of disorderly conduct. Well, he got mad at the policeman that was on duty. He was off duty. He got mad at the policeman and ran up and smashed him in the chest. And this policeman took him and threw him face first on the hood of the car and said, "I should arrest you. Go ahead and arrest me, big man." Well, there was an off-duty boss there and he said, "You take care of it." Well, now you have public lewdness, you have disorderly conduct, and you have harassment for pushing a policeman. First of all, you shouldn't put your hands on a policeman. As a policeman shouldn't put their hands on somebody. I was taught when I come on, you put your hands on somebody if you're going to arrest them. That's the only time you put your hands on somebody. Well, this policeman, he got punished for it. He got 3 days suspension. But what I'm saying is, there are 3 charges that normally anybody sitting in this room, including myself, being a civilian, we would have got arrested for it. But because...
So what is the punishment that these guys are facing? They're on a different level than what any old guy out the street would be on. And you think that should be...
I talked to an alderman today, and he says, in my opinion, you do something stupid like that out in public, you should be fired.
Okay. So the people internally should be treated the same as the people externally.
I don't think...
And that's something you would do if elected mayor.
Well, you know what, I would have to let the chief run his own department.
And do you see that relationship working well based on what's come out in the...
Absolutely.
Okay.
The night that article ran in the paper about my very first meeting, that this lady was talking about, that article came out in the newspaper. I went down to the bridge for, you know what it was called better than me, I think.
National Night Out.
National Night Out. I went down there, and I went walking up, and there is the police, our big police van, and there's a table, and there's a lieutenant sitting there. And he put out his hand. And I said, "Are you sure you want to shake my hand?" And he looked at me and he says, "Mike, we all know who you were talking about. We all know who's dishonest. We all know who's corrupt. I have nothing to worry about. Of course I'll shake your hand." And he shook my hand. And then after I was there for a while, we went into the van and talked. And he said, "I do not understand how some of these guys are getting away with what they're getting away with." Now, this is a police lieutenant. Since that article come out, I've had policemen at my house. They've sat in my living room. We've talked. They came down to my campaign headquarters. I've talked to them there. I mean...
So we are still just talking about a few guys?
We're talking about a few.
Okay.
And it was such an issue that all of this came up that, I mean... Other policemen, they say, "Why didn't you say something while you were there?" Well, first of all, if you say something about someone there that is favored by somebody or really liked by someone, you're put in a position where you don't want to be put in. So what I did is I stayed in the basement and I did my job and I handled my kids and I handled the calls.
I guess that would be my question because, you know, at the beginning, not to belabor this, but it's obviously an issue people are concerned about or have questions about. You know, at the beginning you're saying I'm a guy who, you know, works hard, asks tough questions. You know, they named an award after me, or they gave you an award in the police academy. So you're seeing this on the force for 25 years. Why?
No, I didn't see it for 25 years.
Okay, you're aware of these things taking place?
For the last, I'd say, few years.
Okay. So when you were on the force or when you were not? Because you just retired in May, so yeah, it was definitely
I was on the force, but it didn't happen. Okay. This didn't go on for 25 years.
Okay, so when you were a juvenile detective, sometime within that time period, you knew of incidents that took place.
Yes.